Okay, this morning, brothers and sisters, it sounds like we're all supposed to become religious, give up all our possessions, right? But Jesus is actually instructing us something very important. We could call it a virtue of detachment. These words here we hear, if anyone comes to me without hating his father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, and even his own life, he cannot be my disciple. This seems to contradict the greatest two commandments, love God and your neighbor as yourself. Unless what Jesus means is this, that we are to not hold them as super important when it turns out that sometimes they're going to be against the gospel. If we go back in Scripture to Queen Esther, we see she's queen in a pagan country. And as she's praying, she says, God, you know that I hate the crown that I wear. Notice she hasn't renounced it. She says, I don't wear it in private, but only in public when I have to. And she uses that word hate. Did she go to the king and say, I hate this crown, and throw it at him? No. To dishonor him? No. So Jesus is not telling us that we are to go to our parents or to wives and children, brothers and sisters, or even ourselves, and to say, I hate you. Instead, he's asking us not to love it too much, but to rather be willing to lose those things for the sake of the gospel. You see, this kind of detachment, he says, it is really a basis for becoming the disciple. Because otherwise, what's going to happen is this, like these other people that he gives us example of, we're going to calculate on our own abilities. And the Lord doesn't want us to calculate on our own strength. He wants us to calculate according to his strength, because he does things beyond what we can imagine. So if we rely only on what we think we have to support ourselves, like family members, spouses, children, well, we'll find that they fail us at times. To show us that God often works things that will surprise people, we see in the life of Saint Didacus of Alcalá, whom we celebrate today. Now, when I ask people this question, who has ever heard of Saint Didacus of Alcalá? Raise your hand. Not very many people. But if I were to say, how many of you have ever heard of San Diego, as in San Diego, California? Raise your hand. You ever heard of San Diego, California? Okay. You've heard of Saint Didacus then. You've heard of his name in Spanish. Saint Didacus of Alcalá, we'll read from the Diocese of San Diego website here that just gives a little bit of an insight into just the surprising nature of God, how God can surprise us beyond what we imagine. So, San Diego de Alcalá, or Saint Didacus of Alcalá in Latin, was born about 400 at San Nicolas in Andalusia, Spain. Of poor and God-fearing parents, he entered the third order of St. Francis, or the secular Franciscans, when he was scarcely reached young manhood. And under the direction of a devout secular Franciscan priest, he served God for a long time as a hermit. Consumed with the desire for still greater perfection, he later entered the Franciscan convent at Arizafa in Castile, and was there admitted to solemn vows as a lay brother. His rapid progress in virtue made him a model to all his companions. His soul was continuously occupied with God in prayer and meditation. From this source, that is God and meditation, he gathered such supernatural insight concerning God and the mysteries of faith that learned theologians listened with astonishment to the inspiring conversations of this uneducated lay brother. Since Brother Diego manifested great zeal for souls and willingness for sacrifice, hating his own life even, his superior sent him with other brethren to the Canary Islands, which at that time were still inhabited by people who did not practice the faith and who were quite savage toward the Spanish. And Diego was eager for martyrdom, and in this spirit bore with dauntless patience the many hardships that came his way. Both by word and example he helped in converting many infidels. In 1445 he was appointed guardian of the chief friary on the island at Fortaventura. As a lay brother, he was the superior. Recalled to Spain, he went to Rome in 1450 at the command of the observant Vicar General St. John Capistran to attend the great Jubilee and the canonization ceremonies of St. Bernardine of Siena. On this occasion, an epidemic broke out among the many friars assembled in the large convent of Araceli in Rome. Diego attended the sick with great charity and trust in God, and God did not fail him. Despite the lack of supplies in the city at the time, Diego always had ample provisions for his patients. He miraculously restored many of them to health by merely making the sign of the cross over them. Leaving Rome, he returned to Spain, where, as in the former days, he was a source of great edification to the friars of every convent in which he lived, or friary. In Spain, they call them convents. When he felt that the end of his life was drawing near, he asked for an old and worn-out habit so that he might die in it as a true son of the poor St. Francis. He died on November 12, 1463, at the Franciscan monastery in Alcalá, pressing a crucifix to his heart and repeating the words of the Good Friday chant, "Precious the wood, precious the nails, precious the weight they bear." Months passed before it was possible to bury Brother Diego, so great was the number of people who came to venerate his remains. Not only did his body remain incorrupt, but it diffused a pleasant odor, which is not normal, but we see that often in the lives of the saints. After it was laid to rest in the Franciscan church in Alcalá, astounding miracles continued to occur at his tomb. Pope Sixtus V, himself a Franciscan, canonized Brother Diego in 1588. And he is, in particular, a patron saint not only of San Diego in California, but also of all lay brothers in the Franciscan order. So please be sure to wish Brother Tom a happy feast day on his patron saint's feast. Are we willing to let God surprise us? Are we willing to let go of things that will keep us kind of tied in fear? In the first reading, we hear that we are called to shine out as lights in the midst of a perverse generation. And so many times we have peer pressure to conform, just to please people. So we ask, especially through the intercession of St. Didacus of Alcalá, that we might have that ability to be detached, as Jesus asks of us in the gospel today.